What is up? It's Hobbyist First, here with another Army Showcase video. Today we're going to be taking a look at my collection of Undead miniatures for Warhammer Fantasy, and this is a combination of Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings flavored models combining together to create one massive Undead Legion. We're going to start off here by looking at some bat swarms. These bat swarms are made by Reaper Bones. Moving over, show you a Strigoi vampire, two of them. Those are both made by Reaper Bones. The one on the right was a gargoyle that had some wings. I removed the wings and added a bunch of scratches to him to make him look like he's been involved in some fierce melee fighting. Got some direwolves. Direwolves in this unit have a couple Reaper Bones in there, but the majority of my direwolves are made from the GW plastics with the metal wolf heads, and there's a couple fully metal wolves there as the Doom Wolf unit leaders. Moving back, you can see I've got Blood Knights here, and they are predominantly made out of Bretonnians, including the one on the right is a Bretonnian Paladin BSB, and most of my shields have some type of dragon icon painted on them. And I'll show you the side here. The barding on the horses, these Bretonnian horses, have a chalice that is dripping blood. Moving across, you see the Red Duke, and he's an old metal Vampire Counts miniature, and my favorite dragon, Trogdor, is on his shield there. This other unit of Blood Knights has some metal Vampire Counts, Blood Dragon models, and even the old metal Blood Knight standard that was the original one from the Blood Knight kit. Behind them, I have a unit of 10 Spirit Hosts, and these bases have a mixture of Games Workshop and Reaper models, and most of the bases have at least one ghost looking thing. And then like on the left, you can see the standard, the ghostly standard held by the Orc. There's some Cursed Company models in there. There's some goblins, some Reaper Bones townspeople. So there's an odd mix of citizens. Behind them, we're looking at some Fel Bats. The Fel Bats are mounted on aluminum rods to have them at different heights. So when the unit is together, they can kind of go under and over each other. And I bent some of the wings to vary the poses. Moving over, here is my Terra Geist. This Terra Geist has a official head and neck, but the body is made from a vinyl Mothra toy that I found at Walmart, and I added a stinger to the back, and I replaced the bottom of it with these praying mantis toy legs, and it's mounted on a base with some graveyard scenery. Then we've got some wraiths led by a banshee, and those are mostly metal except for the one in the front row. This is, I think, all of the different sculpts that were available from that one release of the metal wraiths, and you have an individual banshee here next to them. Moving forward, we're looking at a Blood Dragon character, or Blood Dragon vampire, mounted on an Abyssal Terror. This Blood Dragon came from the plastic Zombie Dragon Terra Geist kit, and he was converted to fit on this creature. The creature is a metal Abyssal Terror from a couple editions ago, and I painted it as zombified and stitched together body parts, and it's to represent like an undead griffin or some type of undead ridden monster. So he's standing on a piece of real slate. Moving to the front, you can see my White King battle standard, and he's built from a Chaos Dwarf character with a mace from a Chaos Marauder kit, and the arm is I think the arm is a Chaos Warrior Dwarf arm, and I Scratch built this banner out of a piece of foil, and it's got a lantern on top that comes from the corpse cart kit. And this has a couple runes on it that represent life and death. And these two colors will figure heavily in the skeleton section of my army over on the right, because they come from that kingdom. Behind them are a bunch of miners that represent a horde of Graveguard with great weapons. So there's many plastic miners here from the Battle for Skull Pass set, but there's also a handful of Reaper dwarves and undead dwarves, and there's a Curse Company dwarf in there, and I even have a unit filler of a Reaper pack mule, except I painted him up to be a zombie pack mule to go with those miners. The front here, I forgot, we've got a couple other characters next to the BSB. You can see how tall he is relative to everything else. This is Morgosh, Mortark of Rancor, and Morgosh is from Titanforge, and he's part of their Undead orc line, and I use him as either a vampire on foot, or in most cases, White King with, I forget the cloak, that's the magic item there. And you know, he's this monstrous model, but he's mounted on this little 20mm base, and he stands over everybody in this unit. He goes with the miners. Here's a dwarf wraith, so he's converted from a dwarf standard, and I took some Reaper miniature stuff to make this kind of ethereal ghost stuff underneath him. I have a Necromancer dwarf here with a converted staff, sorcerer's staff, and look at these ghouls in the back. The ghouls are mostly metal, including the metal Strigoi vampire in the front that has an orc head to represent a savage orc that's turned ghoul, or I could use him as a Strigoi vampire, although I have a couple other ones. And there's just some other models here, like this this Slayer is now a ghoul, and there's a couple other different models that I've pressed into service as ghouls. There's a few Mantic ghouls in there. Moving to the back, this Reaper Bones were-rat I use in the army as a Vargulf, and he's mounted on a 50mm square, and I think represents the essence of a Vargulf pretty well, or like a vampiric rat. Moving along the back, here is a corpse cart. This corpse cart has been converted to be goblinoid, so instead of the zombies pulling it, it's being pulled by some undead wolves, and it is crewed by a goblin shaman who is now a necromancer. And I've got this flaming cauldron using that same ethereal effect as the other ethereal stuff in the army. Look at over here, we've got a black coach. I'll give you a side view of that. The black coach is mounted to be flying, and it is also displaying the fly and ethereal boosts that ethereal coach is capable of getting, or sorry, black coach is capable of getting during the game. Next to it is another Reaper Bones figure. Focus here. Another Reaper Bones figure that is here representing a Mortis engine. This is a graveyard golem, and he's got some rusty fences behind him, and he is being led into battle by the Reaper 25th anniversary Necromancer, who's got some kind of ghosts coming out of his book. So the two of them represent a Mortis engine with the Blasphemous Tome upgrade. And my second Mortis engine is here. This is made out of an old Warhammer Fantasy cart and pulled by a skeletal steed and some female miniatures representing the Banshee swarm that would be part of this part of the rule set on this guy. And I'm using this old sarcophagus as the body of the Mortis engine, which is some kind of crypt on wheels. And there's this Necromancer looking guy on top representing the corpse cart driver. My favorite unit probably in the whole army right here is a massive unit of 25 Crypt Horrors, and you will see some Games Workshop ogres in the mix that have some modifications to them, like spikes coming out of their backs, or in the case of this one here, he's got hands from the Crypt Horror kit. And I got some Reaper stuff. I've got this Reaper, like grave robber kind of ogre. There's some werewolves in there. There's a mantic undead troll. There's a D&D like a undead worm thing, and pumpkin golem in the front, another werewolf. But my favorite, and many people mention Zombie Shrek. Zombie Shrek started out as, I believe, a Happy Meal toy, and I totally repainted him, although I painted him in Shrek's true colors to look like Shrek, except now he's got some arrows sticking out of the front of him, which may have led to his demise. And if you zoom in here, you can see that the villagers got to him and cut off an ear and burned him. So he's got a scorched side of his face, and his eye is kind of bloodshot and like it was almost cooked in there. And yeah, pretty funny when people go, "Is that Shrek?" And I realize sometimes that kind of humor is not everybody's favorite thing, but I felt like he just added a lot of character to that unit, and especially when the unit's so large. In front of those Crypt Horrors, here are a few Necromancers. So the first Necromancer is made by Reaper Bones, and he's got this ethereal summoning coming out of his hands. I've got him mounted on a piece of cork. This Necromancer here is a metal figure. I'm not sure who made him. I bought a lot from somebody and he was in there. And the cool thing about this guy is he's got this really tall ghost thing that he's summoning or raising out of this little canopic jar, this little vessel, and this thing's coming out of it. So he looks really cool in a unit of skeletons with this undead thing kind of wafting out of the jar. Here's another Necromancer metal model that I'm not sure where it came from. You know, a lot of these things I get in trades, or I buy a collection of models from somebody. And here is my Vampire Lord General, and I don't know where this model came from. I got him when I was in college, and I wasn't intending to use him as a vampire. I just thought he looked like an old man, and he kind of struck me one day as having the right kind of armor, and he looked like an ancient, grizzled guy. So I painted him up as a vampire, and he has, surprisingly for people, quick blood, and has magic shield and stuff. So he'll catch some people just because he's unassuming, this small little vampire character hiding out in a unit of zombies or skeletons. And to his side, I've got a couple Blood Dragon vampires. So this one started out as the limited edition standard bearer for vampire counts. He's metal. He was part of the Skulls program in the 1990s, early 2000s maybe. I replaced the standard with this halberd, so he could be fielding maybe the ogre blade or some kind of high-powered weapon. And next to him, I have another metal vampire model. I do not know who made this, but I think it looks really elegant as an aristocratic vampire. So I'll roll him out once in a while. And my favorite vampire model is this one here. This is one of the older Blood Dragon metal infantry men, but I swapped his additional sword for a shield, which is made from a piece of jewelry. And he's also got a sword swap. I think the sword came from an elf kit, but it's certainly not a vampire sword. And you can see his white armor. I was inspired after watching Gladiator, after seeing Joaquin Phoenix, Emperor character in that white armor. I was like, oh, it'd be so cool to have a Warhammer guy dressed that way. And you may have seen behind these vampires in the background, this unit of zombies. I've got 170 zombies. I'll pull back a little bit so you can see what's going on. The first 100 of them are almost all Talabheim Empire kit bashes. So we're looking at State Troop and Free Company kits plus zombies going into make that. So I'll zoom in so you can see the makeup of these zombies a little bit and give you an idea of the level of detail that I put into even the lowly zombies. There's Zombie Santa, which people are like, oh man, you made a zombie of Santa. Yep, he's the leader of the horde, And we've got some more state troops here. We've got a standard from one of the early Metal Empire kits. You can see one of my few unit fillers, which is a destroyed cannon with a crew still as zombies trying to operate this wrecked cannon with a cannonball. And I've got a zombie horse, which you can see he's cut up and bloody and oozing, and some other kit bashes with other Empire stuff. As we move towards the back of the zombie horde, you'll see some other races represented. Like there's a dead Slayer. Here's a mom with her children from Reaper. There's an undead old, I think that's Frodo right there from Lord of the Rings series. There's an undead Saurus right there with some skeleton arms. So it was, it was an interesting mix of undead stuff. And I'll zoom out one more time, show you what the whole 170 strong mob looks like. So it's not something that's competitive, but it's super fun to own that many zombies. And I'm always making a few more just because zombies are fun. This guy in the back, this model is a combo of a Titan Forge, I guess there counts as Coven Throne, and I replaced the stuff up top with this Grenadier Giant Lich. And he is much taller than, he's almost like 54 millimeter scale. He's much taller than the other dudes in the army, and he's riding on top of this huge ghost giant. And the base has a 3D printed coffin and a crypt opening up, and just these spirits all coming out of it. So I used this most recently as a Necrophec's Colossus, the largest one. What was it? The Nightmare Colossus, which is in the Monstrous Arcanum book. And I was able to give it 3 levels of death magic. So totally befitting of the model. Is a huge caster monster thing. Came out around 650 points. It was super fun. I used it in a 4,000 point escalation tournament game at Du Bois GT 2021. Moving across here on this hill, I have 3 war machines. So on the right, there are 2 Mantic Screaming Skull catapults, and they are crewed by skeletons. I believe this one's crewed by an undead dwarf back there, because who knows war machines better than dwarves. And this one here, this is like a toy catapult that is a pretty unsophisticated sculpt, but I painted it up to match the other ones, and I made this pot of skulls to give this one the Skulls of the Foe upgrade. And you can see the shields mounted on all these things. We're starting to get into the army colors of the Empire of this guy. Where is it? This guy. So this is his shield here. So this is where we're getting into his forces. My Vampire King Ahaz. And this here is, man, I forget the name. There's a Tomb King thing that's the Casket of Souls. There you go. Casket of Souls. So this is just a magical dude sitting on a throne with his guards, and the whole model is mostly Reaper bones stuff and some bits to make this kind of collection of gear around him. So he's a Casket of Souls for Tomb King. So my Tomb King stuff doesn't look Egyptian. I wanted my Tomb King stuff to look more Gothic, so that it fit in with my other undead stuff. And in that vein, here are my Necropolis Knights. So Necropolis Knights officially are those snake riders, but because I didn't want the Egyptian theme, I opted to go with these large skeletal mounted troops, which these are from the new Bone Reapers Age of Sigmar stuff, and I'll show you from above. They look decent on a chariot size base. This is a 50 by 100, and a unit of 5 of them was about $50, and they paint up nice, especially when they're alongside other skeletal troops. Speaking of skeletal troops, here are 50 skeleton archers, and there are some Tomb King bits in there, but I've also mixed in some Reaper, some Grenadier, even got some Black Tree design skeletons here, and you can look here to see an idea of how I'm painting my skeletons. I'm not dry brushing. I'm actually individually painting all the ribs and the highlights on the bone, So it's more time consuming to put them out this way, but I like that higher contrast, and I really like to stay away from the chalky look of dry brushed bone. I like the high contrast of that bright, especially in good lighting. It looks nice. She represents I don't remember the name of the character. I'm not focusing either here. Who's the queen in the Tomb King's book that has a synergy with archers or whatever? She's the one that came with a cat. But this is my version of her using a Reaper Bones dancer, and I just figured she was this elegant lady that was doing like a snake pose, and she's supposedly gives I think like poison to the skeletons, something like, I don't remember. She has a good synergy with them, which is why I've got her parked in front of a horde of skeletons. Haven't played with her that way, but certainly something I want to try. Here's Krell. Krell is a fine cast model. He's one of the only fine cast models that I own. He's like early gen fine cast. I bought him on the release day of the 8th edition Vampire Counts book. And he's painted up in red armor, representing the fact that he is a fallen Chaos Warrior, or Chaos Lord maybe, I don't remember, but he's Chaos. Here's a unit of 25 skeletons, another mix of random stuff. I've got a Graveguard champion there, and a bunch of other stuff. How about this banner? See if I can focus on that. This banner is my attempt at that Drakenhof banner from the rulebook, 7th edition. I think you could take. I don't know if it's in the 8th edition book, but Drakenhof banner. I free-handed the moon and stuff there. Behind them, I've got a unit of 8 skeleton chariots. I opted for a bronze effect on the hull, and then the yoke and wheels are painted in rusted steel against the bone of the crew and the steeds. I thought looked pretty nice, and I've tried to minimize the Egyptian icon on there and gone with, again, that more, drab look with just metals and the 2 colors, that green and slate blue of the army. My champion for the unit is a Reaper, 6-armed, like bone fiend, and he's on an old metal Chaos Chariot. So it's a slightly different chariot sculpt than the rest of the unit, befitting him as a champion, or I guess I could use him as a Tomb King in a chariot. And I have full command. You can see the banner here is, it's got that lantern on the top, and it's just got like a rag on a stick. There's 8 of those guys, and back to the front. Oh man, I'll go back here. I've got some Tomb King units. I got a giant scorpion who's made by Reaper, and then these 2 swarms, which is just a pile of beetles with a spider on top. Those are also Reaper. And here's some of the end times constructs. I forget if these are the Archai or the Harbingers, but these are those large models that came out with the Nagash book, and they're painted up with that same ethereal style. By the way, that ethereal style, which you can see on a lot of my units here, that's copied from Duncan Rhodes' tutorial when he was showing how to paint the Nagash model when it came out for End Times. So it's using that Nihilak Oxide and Celestra Gray and some inks to do that. It's a pretty easy scheme, but certainly takes a little bit more effort than dry brushing some white onto some green, which I would have done in my earlier days, and now I take the time to do a little nicer thing. I've got a really tall Lich. You can see if I back up, he's much taller than the other ones, so he would be a Lord if I were taking a Lich Lord. I have another Lich here, and then on him, get it to focus, and he's got a cool blue magical staff. And then another Lich here, and this is a classic Games Workshop model. I recently saw him in a really old catalog, and I'd forgotten that he's a GW figure, but he's got some nice character to him. Here's a unit of 25 skeletons. So these are hand, weapon, and shield, and there's some oddballs in there, like the Mantic skeleton dog with handler. You see this guy with a skeletal dog on a chain. He was a prize for the Mantic program where you collected the stickers, And I'll show you the kind of painting I'm doing on banners. You see the highlighting there. And I've got this Undead Skeletal Dwarf in the front of that. A musician. So I put a lot of love into my skeletons, even though they die in droves. Here's a unit of 54 Spearman. And again, a mix of some of the older GW skeletons, some of the more recent ones, and then from some different brands. This unit filler one here, I don't know if you noticed this. This is a Mearse miniature riding on top of the pile of skeletons from Harry the Hammer, and that's all a metal base there. The Mearse miniature is resin, I think. Looking behind them, I have a unit of Ushabti, and they sometimes see double duty as Crypt Horrors, but the one on the left is a Reaper Bones. The two shorter ones are made by Rawl Partha Europe, and this tall fella, he comes from Grenadier. And behind them is a Reaper Bones giant, or skeleton giant, or colossal skeleton. And I use him either as a Necrolith Colossus or the skeleton giant in Tomb Kings, or I most recently used him as a corpse giant, which is another one of those units from Monstrous Arcanum monster book. And the last bit here is some Graveguard. I've got 30 Graveguard, mostly the metal Graveguard with hand weapon and shield, but I'm also using a Tomb King as one of their number in the front because he's armed with a hand weapon and a shield. And I'm using this very old Chaos Champion as the champion for the unit of Graveguard because he's got a skull helm and a bony looking hands. And I'll zoom out, you can see what's going on with those. And this last unit here is a unit of 3 Carrion. I'll zoom in, maybe get a better idea of what my bone work looks like. See this? So the way I'm highlighting the bone with lines, and I'm leaving the middle area darker, and I'm individually painting, lines on the bone and painting the ribs, and then I'm even painting the shade at the end. I'm dark lining in between the ribs to get the maximum contrast there. So this is a mix of different flying skeletal things. I actually used Carrion in the tournament, and I thought they were pretty good last weekend. 72 points for 3 of them. Pretty good deal. So I'm gonna move from right to left. You can see, here I'll zoom out a little bit. Here's all my skeleton stuff, including the war machines. So there's 150, 180, probably 200 skeleton models over here. And then over here, we got a bunch of vampires and necromancers with crypt horrors and zombies, and a bunch of carts and stuff in the back. And Graveguard, ghouls, lots of ethereals, led by a couple units of blood knights and some wolves and bats in this area. So turn that around. So I hope you enjoyed checking out my Undead collection. It is constantly growing. I'm about to enter a campaign where I'm going to be using my Undead models, so I will be adding some more units. If you'd like to follow my progress on that, you follow me on Instagram at hobbyist_first, and you can see my my new projects. I post pretty much daily on there. I've got several other videos with army showcases here on YouTube, so be sure to check those out and subscribe to see what else I'm working on. I appreciate it that you made it to the end of the video. I know it got pretty long, but there's quite a lot here to see. So thanks so much for watching, and take care.